Do you recognize this guy? I'm willing to bet you do, because otherwise I don't know why you'd be on this video. But if you don't, well, I just have one question for you. Will you be funky? These are the U.B Funkeys, a play on USB and Funkeys, the first ever toy-to-life game. The grandfather to Skylanders and Amiibos, U.B Funkeys was a game that required physical figures to play. It came with a variety of small little figures that could all be inserted into the back of this guy. Releasing in 2007, it very quickly became a hit with the kids. I know this because I was one of the kids. I thought it was so cool. Finally, my two favorite things could be connected. Toys and the computer. It had merch, countless sets released, a skateboard, Comic-Con booths, almost a TV show at one point, and a Speed Racer tie-in. For some reason. All for a lifetime of only 3 years, shutting down in 2010. So what happened? He doesn't know. So what happened? What even was the game? Why did it shut down? And why is this guy's hat so big? I am here to tell you to tell you that. So come with me and take a look at the rise and the fall of a 16-year-old game that I once loved like a mother loves her child. Let's take a deep dive into U.B Funkeys. Ooh. So how did U.B Funkeys come to be? Look, this guy's a snowflake. This guy's a speedometer without eyes. Who comes up with this? U.B Funkeys was created by the company Radica Games, and they were playing with all kinds of ideas for USB-based toys that could link up to a game on a computer in some way. Originally coming up with the idea of different USB sticks that you would swap out to access different parts of a world or play different games. But they were lacking one crucial element still. Guys. Everybody loves little guys. He. Look at my little friend. Sorry. It's fun. It's fun to have a little guy in a game. And other games in the 2000s were very much showing that as well. So they made the USBs into little characters, added a world to explore, developed a story for that world, and explored all kinds of different designs before landing on this. Like I said, the game was made by Radica, who before U.B Funkeys created things like plug-and-play TV boxes and this little toy series called Cube World, which I also had as a kid. Again, little guy in there. I'm telling you. I wish I could tell you some kind of passion story about a guy who for his whole life had this idea about little guys with hands in their pockets and he just needed a chance to make it real, but there's not. It was a business who wanted to make a product. The figures. Every figure is the same silhouette of a guy with a torso, arms, legs, a head, and these little ear things. This Funky right here is the only Funky that I still have that I actually played with as a kid. My original set of them I sold for PS3 money. Kids gotta play Black Ops somehow. I really genuinely love the design of them. I think that's why I liked them so much as a kid. It's kind of like the Deadmau5 head. A simple silhouette shape that can have anything on it while still being recognizable in its iconic shape. This design just screams 2000s to me too. I don't know why. The hands in the pockets, the little tilt of the head is just cool. It's just fucking thugged out. There are technically over 135 different Funkeys. There's actually only 45, but each different design of Funky has 3 different rarities. Each one comes in common, rare, and very rare. The normals were extremely common, of course. The rares were harder to find, and the very rares were... I think you can figure it out from here. In-game, you start off in the overworld, or Funky's Town, and spread about the map are different portals to different worlds. In order to go through these portals and access the other areas, you have to equip a Funky that is from that world. So you'd have to own at least one Funky from each of the worlds if you wanted the full experience. There are 10 zones total. Wait. No, I might have fucked this up. There are roughly 10 zones. 9, I think there's 9. First, there's Funky's Town, the overworld and place you start off in. Then there's Magma Gorge, a scary fire world loosely inspired by hell, probably. Kelpie Basin, a fish world. Laputa Station, an alien world. It's very green. Then there's Paradox Green, an even greener world based around nature and plants, and also the Cold War. There's Funkiki Island, a vacation world that has snowboarding and surfing, and snakes. Then there's Daydream Oasis and Nightmare Rift, 2 polar opposites of each other, featuring good dreams and bad dreams. Like mate. Then there's the Hidden Realm, which pretty much just serves as a finale to the story. And lastly, the Speed Racer world. Yup. Each of these zones had their own different shops, games, and environments corresponding to their theme. Funkiki Island has tropical surfy items. Ooh. What?
Oh.
Kelpie Basin has fish and aquatic games, and bowling. Nightmare Rift has, of course, evil things of nightmares.
Oh shit! Ew.
Despite that though, Nightmare Rift was actually one of my favorites. The song went very hard, and I really like this guy who's the sheriff of the Nightmare Realm. Look at him. That's a cool man. Definitely the weirdest, though, is the fucking Speed Racer one. Why the hell is there an entire zone dedicated to Speed Racer? Advertising different franchises and IPs like this is nothing new. Brands do it all the time. You see it in every other virtual world. Club Penguin, Pop Tropica, Bin Weebles. But with U.B Funkeys, they only ever did Speed Racer. It would feel normal if there was a bunch of different brand tie-ins, but there was only ever one. There was apparently plans to add more eventually though. At Comic-Con 2008, they even showed prototypes of DC superhero themed Funkeys that never ended up releasing. So now there is just Speed Racer on the map forever. At least they got a cameo in the movie. In stores, you could get Funkeys individually in packs of 3, and most commonly in a starter pack, which gave you 2 Funkeys and a hub. The hub, of course, is required to play the game. This is the default hub, but it also came in pink, black, Speed Racer, red, and look at this purple design one. I fucking love this one. Almost all Funkeys stick to this hands in the pocket silhouette, very rarely breaking from this sometimes with hats or beards or antennas or this thing. But there are also a few usable figures that are not Funkeys. There were 2 limited edition packs. One included a figure of the mayor, which is a Funkey, but he's like the main guy of the story, so I'm just counting him in this. As well as a henchman, Master Locks, the main villain of the game, and also just a normal Bones Funkey, just for good measure, I guess. The second pack included another NPC story character, Jerry Native, as well as the Pineapple King, and another little guy called just the Native. It was a different time. I had this set. I remember finding it back in the day at fucking Zellers of all places. I just outed myself as a Canadian. I had no idea there even was non-Funkey figures before this. My reaction to this pack is akin to a Christian witnessing the return of Jesus Christ. Only difference is I was more excited. It was so cool, especially because there was only 2 packs to ever feature non-Funkey characters. There was supposed to be one more pack like this though, that would have featured creatures from the Dream State Oasis. They were even shown off at the International Toy Fair in 2009, but they were cancelled before they ever hit production. This guy. Fuck. I wanted this guy so bad. I told you already. I love this guy. The sheriff guy. And he could have been a figure. Fuck. You could buy Funkey figures at pretty much any store across the world, I think. You know, your Walmarts, your Targets, your... I don't know any other grocery stores. But also for a limited time, at Wendy's. Wendy's ran a promotion in their kids packs where you could get a variety of Funkeys toys. There was a bobblehead, a keychain, 2 different demo discs, and also a board game. What? The bobblehead and the keychain were the same size as a regular Funkey, but were not usable in-game. Shame. But Speed Racer works just fine! Not all Funkeys designs were ever released as figures. There are some as NPCs in-game that you cannot buy and cannot be played as. I don't think this was intentional though, they probably just never got to come out. There are also unused designs that have been shown in various things like promotional art that don't exist in-game or in figures at all. Like this soccer Funkey or this football Funkey, a Target logo Funkey, and a British Funkey! Oh, yo, tea and crumpet and that. I talked a bit about Funkey rarities. The common, rare, and very rare variants. These rarities are of course a planned part of the production, but some Funkeys are rarer than this for other reasons. I'm talking about unreleased or promotional Funkeys. This is Dot. He is a Funkey that was exclusive to attendees at Comic-Con 2008, and there were only 700 of him ever made, so he is very sought after and can reach up to $700 on eBay. That's if he even gets listed. The Speed Racer series of Funkeys didn't sell that well, so because of this, some of the Speed Racer Funkeys that were planned ended up never releasing. One of these Funkeys was Taijo. Taijo never released, or so was thought. Sometime in 2009, a listing popped up on eBay for a regular U.B Funkeys set, with a hub, some run-of-the-mill Funkeys, and this. An avid Funkey enthusiast scooped this up before the owner could ever realize. He got it, he tested it in a hub, and it was fully playable in-game. Where did this come from? Why did they have this? Why did they not know? The new owner of the Taijo Funkey quickly relisted it on eBay, where it went for $800 US. That is crazy. This wasn't even the end though. Only a few months later, up popped another Taijo listing. But this time, along with 3 other unreleased Speed Racer Funkeys that hadn't previously been seen in any toy show or con, and were not planned with the original set of Speed Racer Funkeys. These ones, of course, likely don't work in game. But it goes to show that these prototypes and these Funkeys that never came out, they're out there, somewhere. waiting to be found. They're probably in like the back attic of some Mattel employee, but you never know. Maybe you'll be the one to find the unreleased Pillsbury Doughboy Funky or something. And that's pretty much it for Funky figures. They did also sell plushies and USB drives and a skateboard maybe, but all of these were just cosmetic. The only thing usable in game was the Funkies figures themselves. So what was the game about? The game. U.B Funkeys The Game is a 2.5D open world created in Flash, with mini games, shops, a customizable house that's a must-have for 9-year-old me, and an intricate lore and story. It's not too different from similar virtual worlds of the time like Club Penguin or Animal Jam, but without their social aspects. When you first load in, you'll spawn in Funkeys Town. Won't you take me to here? Bet no one's ever made that joke. Before you can do anything though, you'll be greeted by Mayor Say So, who gives you a rundown about the game and an introduction to the story. These pop-ups are how any instructions or tutorials are communicated, but also how the entire story is shown, with pictures and narration, kind of like a storybook almost. Anytime a dialogue pops up like this, you'll get this cool little jingle, which can get a little annoying, but I still love it. Speaking of story and lore, what is the story behind U.B Funkeys? The full lore of the game is way too long to explain in this video, but of course I will give you an introduction. Basically, all of the Funkeys inhabit a world called Terrapinia. I'm pretty sure that's the planet name, they never really say. They all live in different zones, but they want to see each other so badly. I want to see you, he says. I want to see you too, this one says. So Dr. Tinker, one of the smartest minds of the entire Funky generation, top of his class at Funky Harvard, inventor of the Funky microwave. Don't ask what he was doing between Funky 1939 and 1945. He creates the portals, so Funkeys can travel around wherever they want, whenever they want, and see each other and have a great time. Oh wow, I love you so much, and I'm so happy. Yes, me too. Wow, man, this is really cool and really dope. I like right now. I really hope that nothing disrupts this nice, great life we live. Then there was a great disaster. Shit. Which was a bunch of huge explosions that destroyed all of the portals, shattering the crystals that powered them into shards that got spread all over Terrapinia. Dr. Tinker, currently MIA, probably died in the explosion. Through all of this fucking chaos, some asshole named Dr. Locks comes in with a bunch of little robotic guys called henchmen, and they start robbing and harassing and vandalizing and eating pizza with a knife and fork, which isn't bad, but it's pretty weird. So in short, basically we're fucked. And that's all just the first cutscene. But from there, you're dropped in Funkeys Town and you're free to explore all of Terrapinia. The objective of the story is to find the crystal shards that have been scattered about Terrapinia, the ones that power the portals. You can find them by doing all kinds of things like playing mini games and solving quests, which is kind of what you do anyways in Funkeys. When I played when I was a kid, it felt like I would just be going, exploring, and playing games, and it would just throw me some story every now and then. The world is filled with NPC Funkeys walking around, shops that you can buy different things for, to decorate your house, and tons of different Funkeys rooms, which all contain a unique minigame themed around that Funky. The environments also have these fun little interactive things placed about that I really loved as a kid. In Magma Gorge, there's dinosaur fossil pieces scattered around you can find. In Funkeys Town, there's a fountain you can throw coins into. There's these guys racing boats in a pond. On Funkiki Island, there's a tree you can shake and a coconut falls out. It's so fun, and it just gives the world that little bit of extra life. With all that fun though, there's of course a little bit of danger. Like I said, there are henchmen who at any point can come up to you and steal your coins, but the most dangerous obstacle of them all is dirt. Over time, as you walk around the world, your Funky will start to get dirty. I never understood this. And if you get fully dirty, then you'll be unable to access any rooms or shops due to the Funkeys that run them not wanting to interact with you or smell you. And can you really blame them? Would you let this guy into your house? He's coded. Fear not though, to get clean, all you have to do is visit one of the many cleaning stations littered around every world. All you have to do is walk into them and it takes 5 seconds. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it still begs the question, why? Why is this a thing? Why add this? Why have this as a feature? It's not the biggest deal in the world. It's easy to fix, but it can get annoying at times. Sometimes you're miles away from a cleaning station. You hiked all the way across the map to get to this room. You just want to complete this quest when, oh, sorry, You dirty. Looks like your funky fell in a pile of mulch. Time to backtrack all the way across the map to a cleaning station. I feel like this was added to increase the realism or like attachment you have to your funkies, making them more tangible in a way by having to care for them and practice hygiene just like you would if they were real. But it's still a weird feature. Of the dangers though in the funkies world, by far the worst is in the speed racer world, where you can just get hit by a car. In U.B Funkeys, you also get your own house or crib. It may look like a house, but this is a crib. It's much cooler. I rag on it, but like it being called a crib was very, very cool to me as a kid. You can customize your crib with various different layouts, patterns, paints, rugs, CD players, that can all be purchased from shops with coins. When the game servers were still live, you could invite people over to your crib to come check it out. They could come in, walk around, and you could chat with them just like you could in designated chat rooms that were in the world. It was cool. I had a fucking pimped out room. Oh my god. I just want to see that room again. It's okay. Time goes on. Speaking of time, the game did not launch with everything that I've talked about. Of the 9 realms present in the final game, it actually only launched with 4. Funky's Town, Magma Gorge, Kelpie Basin, and Laputa Station, along with the Funky series to match. As further Funky sets were released, further worlds were added along with them, giving you an incentive to buy the new ones. Along with new worlds and new Funkies, features were also added over time. It was kind of like a live service game in a way. This was before I knew how to look up change logs and news about updates. Every time I logged on, I was excited to see if anything had changed or been added. It felt like a real living world, always evolving and changing. And it was great for Radica too, because to experience these new things, I needed more Funkies. The updates allowed them to add more than just gameplay features though. With the update that added online capabilities, they also added one more ability. The ability to make money. Almost every item in U.B Funkeys is acquired through the in-game currency of coins that can only be acquired organically through playing the game. But that doesn't make a lot of money. On the Funky's HUD on the left, there's a little button right here. This is the trunk. Everything in here is paid with a different currency called loot. Loot can only be obtained via real-world purchase. With your newly acquired loot, you could buy various different cosmetics, like little trails that fly around your Funky, or little rain clouds, also specialized house items that you could only get in the trunk. Then we have the only kind of justifiable one, the portal jammer. Portal jammers can be used to jam portals, allowing you passage through them without having the proper Funky equipped, which is kind of nice if you didn't have any Funkies from that area. They're called portal jammers, but they can also be used on game rooms as well, to get into the rooms without needing the specific Funky needed, which I think is the most convenient use case. Because if you want to play a game for a quest or just to try it out, you don't want to buy a whole Funky just to get in that room just to complete that quest. This was a pretty good bypass of that. Not the other trunk shit though. Those can fuck off. Good boy. I don't think I really cared about any of this stuff as a kid. I think I might have convinced my mom one time to buy me a familiar, and I just kind of went, huh, it's a little vine thing on me. Unused content. U.B Funkeys has a lot of things that are completely inaccessible without outside mods. The first of which is in the Speed Racer zone. As you probably know by now, each Funky has its own unique minigame. But do you remember how, due to poor sales, not every Speed Racer Funky ended up coming out? I talked about Taijo, how he ended up for sale somehow on eBay. Him and the unreleased Speed Racer Funky Tak both have games in the Speed Racer zone on U.B Funkeys. You can still access these rooms and their minigames through the portal jammer, but there is no way to enter these rooms through traditional means. And in 2007, online shopping wasn't really that big yet. Getting your mom to order you something through the computer was a lot more difficult than it is now. So there was likely some kids out there who couldn't use the portal jammer and just can't go in here. The functionality of the Funkies was fully planned, because with mods, you can spoof your Funky ID, and we can see that both Taijo and Tak are fully playable in-game, and are allowed entry into the rooms no problem. That's really, really cool that they're in the game, but they just never released. But they're far from the only unused Funky IDs. The Henchman Funky figure. There is only one of them, and it only comes in red. But in-game exist Funky IDs for a purple, blue, and green version of him. The Dream State Special Edition Funky Pack that never ended up releasing has code in the game for the characters that would have been released in the set. This guy... Shit! Whoops. Oh. Anyways, this guy called Goya is completely playable. He is fully animated and can enter the Dream State Oasis no problem. Oh, I thought he could. This guy named Dolly is also in the game, but much less complete. He animates in just fine, but if you move at all, he'll completely disappear. Still though, this is so fucking cool. I love this shit. That's how close these guys were to releasing. They're in the game still. Shout out to Loco, who created the Funky Selector UI that lets you play the game without any physical funkies, and also lets you play as these unused funkies. It's so cool. This is about all the unused or alpha content I could find on U.B Funkeys. This and a few beta screenshots. It leads me to wonder though, like how close did they get on the DC superheroes? I don't know how you spoof your funky, but I'm assuming every funky that's in the game has been found. So I don't think there's any DC characters in there, and I don't think there's any funkies beyond that. But it's still interesting to speculate what could have been if funkies never closed down. I'm sure they had something. I guess the rest of the game's history will remain shrouded in mystery. But speaking of mystery, there still is one mystery left in the present game. This red button can be found in Nightmare Rift. Do you want to see what it does? So does every single other person who's ever played U.B Funkeys. I looked and I searched and I dug for answers, but nobody has been able to figure out what this button does. In an interview with U.B Funkeys community wiki, developer Jeff Bruno hinted that it does something. The way he talks about the button and the shroud of mystery that seems to surround it in every place that I see it talked about, I have a theory. My theory is the button was originally intended to be something. Most likely some kind of environment quirk like these Simon Says buttons or this plant that gives you coins. But when they implemented it, they just forgot to make it do something, thus becoming a bit of an inside joke internally among the dev team. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe every time it's pressed, a randomly selected U.B Funky lights on fire for no reason. I don't know. We know now that it does nothing, but when the game was still getting updated, this must have been such a mystery. I never really cared much for it when I was a kid, but there was probably some kid out there just waiting every update trying to figure out what this thing did. That was kind of the magic of the old internet. Before you could really look up things. I mean, you could in 2007, but not as easily as you can now. It allowed these urban legends like the button to flourish, and it's something that I kind of miss. U.B Funkeys, after its initial boom, seemed to be doing pretty well, evident with numerous post-launch sets and updates. So what happened? How come only 2 years after it launched, it was discontinued? U.B Funkeys' fall from grace is actually a pretty sad tale. Radica Games is the company who made U.B Funkeys. But before U.B Funkeys' launch, Radica was acquired by Mattel in 2006. I don't know, obviously, what happened behind closed doors, but I'm assuming Radica needed the help that Mattel could give it in order to get U.B Funkeys off the ground. With the help of Mattel, it launched pretty successfully, it seemed, and was going pretty strong all the way till 2008. Do you remember what happened in 2008? Episode 1 of The Garfield Show premiered, and also there might have been a worldwide economic collapse. Because of this, Mattel, like a lot of companies, was starting to conserve resources and cut things they deemed unimportant. From that same interview with Jeff Bruno, he says Mattel slowly began kind of limiting what U.B Funkeys could do, before quickly cutting almost the entire Radica Games staff, including Jeff. Any of the few remaining employees were moved to the Mattel head office in LA. From there, with almost everyone who worked on the project gone, Mattel discontinued U.B Funkeys in 2009. It's especially sad because apparently there was little to no communication about what was happening until the very last second. They were still steadily designing new funkies, new worlds, and planning their future ambitions when the news hit. So they never got the opportunity to conclude Funkeys the way they wanted to. Some sets never released. The Funkeys lore never got a proper ending. It did kind of, but it's left very open-ended. There was even talks to have a Funkeys Nickelodeon TV show at one point. If the financial crisis of 2008 never hit, there's a chance U.B Funkeys could still be around today. Maybe not today, but at least around for a lot longer than it was. But that's not what happened. Mattel sold off the rest of the U.B Funkeys stock and discontinued the brand. Although I found this Reddit post from some guy in like Finland who had a store that was still selling them. What the fuck? It may have met an untimely end, but it still lives on in my heart and the hearts of anyone who played it. And through the amazing work of some extremely talented individuals, it's still almost completely playable today on modern hardware. Through mods and different services, you can boot it up right now. You don't even need any physical figures. So if you want to give it a try, I'll leave a link in the description. U.B Funkeys, of course, is not without its flaws. It's far from the perfect game. It pioneered the toy-to-life games we see today in things like Amiibos and Skylanders, and Disney Infinity for like a couple years there. You could even loosely argue that it kickstarted things like gacha games and experiences where you buy individual characters at different rarities. Without my friend right here, we may have never even gotten things like CSGO cases. That's a stretch actually, I think someone would have done it. Today, this can be a very invasive business model that is hated by many, but U.B Funkeys wasn't that, or at least it didn't feel like that. I had all kinds of things like Funkeys already. I had Beyblades, tons of Pokemon cards, Bakugan, Mighty Beans. Collectible physical things are cool. To me, U.B Funkeys were nothing more than another collectible thing like that. Only this time, I could bring them into a virtual world with me. And I love virtual worlds. A lot. So for what it was and the passion behind it, it was a cool little game. And I really liked it. Should you play it today? Probably not. The game is very much meant for kids. The story is okay. The gameplay is pretty much just running around a world and playing flash games. But for 9-year-old me, putting that Funky down into the exposed scalp of his father was one of the coolest things I had ever done. So I'll end this video with a quote from Speed Racer. Go fast.